Welcome to Framlingham College In Conversation.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Framlingham College In Conversation. My name is Louise North, Principal of Framlingham College, and I'm delighted to be hosting this episode with Holly and Rafferty. Today we are joined by multi-record breaker, mountaineer and speaker, the extraordinary Squash Falconer. Thank you all for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, to kick off, could you tell us, Squash, where your story started?
So my story started on a farm in Derbyshire. I grew up in the Midlands and I was on a farm and my plan was to be a farmer, not a mountaineer at all. But I went through school and I originally wanted to be a farmer, then I wanted to be a vet. But then I went through a stage sort of 16 to 18 of completely changing my mind. But for the first time in my life, I thought I don't actually know what I want to do and I didn't have an answer for people and it caused me quite a lot of stress really. So I didn't really say too much about that. And it wasn't until a friend of mine said to me, I really want to do a ski season. I just thought, that's perfect. That will buy me some time and it sounds like a fun thing to do. So I had the idea to go off and do a ski season. And even when I did that and I started to have an idea about what I wanted to do and things started happening, I still wasn't exactly sure where it was going, but I just learned to trust that if I was enjoying myself and supporting what I was doing, I could just stay on that path. And I kind of realised that things just had a way of working out and I started to trust that. So I got on that path and haven't really looked back.
Can I just ask, what about your parents in all of this? Were they happy with that kind of freewheeling approach to life?
Well, it was interesting because some of my friends' parents were very adamant that they had to go to university, and they didn't have the freedom that I had. But I think I was incredibly lucky, I went to a lovely school and it had the same feeling that Framlingham has actually. I was incredibly supported by the staff and the other pupils at the school. And I think I had unconditional love and my mum was just incredibly supportive of me and just believed in me. And I had this inner confidence. And I think because I went into the ski season and I was earning money, I wasn't earning a lot, but I was kind of funding myself. My mum was like, well, okay, this is your choice. This is your life. Let's see how it goes. And so I had like a good level of support, but I was also supporting myself and making it happen for myself.
Yeah. As much as you have had lots of support, has there ever been a time where you've faced adversity and, what have you learned about yourself in overcoming it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been lots of times when I've found myself thinking, Squash, what on earth are you doing? Like, why have you put yourself in this position? And that ranges from literally standing on the edge of takeoff on my paraglider, thinking I can climb mountains like Mount Everest, or standing up in front of a room full of people, Public speaking used to cripple me. And I think that the thing that I've learned through all of these things is I can do it and I do get through it. I don't actually just fall down and die. I rise to the challenge and I get through it. And I think I said to you guys earlier, you either win or learn. And I think there's been a lot of learning on the way.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a moment during one of your adventures where you thought about giving up and what kept you going through those tough times?
Yes, I mean, there's been lots of those. I think my first big experience of it was when I was doing an adventure race when I was in my early 20s. And it was physically the hardest challenge I'd ever done at the time. And I reached a point where I'd heard people talk about hitting the wall before, but I'd never experienced that in training or anything. And, people, they vomit, they can't carry on. And I was in this adventure race. I'd been racing for hours. And the last section was a 30-mile fell run over Ben Nevis. And I was like, wow.
That was the last section?
That was the last section. I'd already been racing for like nearly 30 hours. And I was done. And it was hurting to breathe. Every part of my body was hurting. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. And I was slowing down and one of my teammates came up behind me and she said to me, Squash, all I want you to do is think about one next step. That's it. Just do that. And she said, keep pushing, keep going. And we did that for 3 more hours and we finished the race together. And in that race and that time, I learned 2 really valuable lessons that the right team caring for each other will get you through. And when I thought I was done, I was nowhere near done. And, it helped me on big mountains, but it helped me in all areas of my life.
Can I ask about the public speaking thing?
Yes.
Where you said that you used to be crippled by it.
Crippled.
And we talk a lot about the confidence that we want all of our children to have to stand up and be able to speak. How did you master that one?
So when my first experience of it was in senior school, we had an Advent candle and we used to have church assemblies every morning. And it was the form prefect's job to light the candle and I was form prefect. and I had to go and light the candle. And days before, I was ill off school with a migraine because all I had to do was get up and light this candle. But I was mortified about it. And I made myself ill. Anyway, I actually managed to do it and I got through it. So I kind of showed myself that I could do it despite how uncomfortable it was. And then I kind of went through school. I was quite a big character and everything, but still the public speaking thing terrified me. I was not interested. And then in the sixth form, I got asked to be head girl. And I actually just was devastated. I said, no, I can't do it because I couldn't bear the thought of having to stand up in front of everyone. So I reached a compromise with the head that I'd be deputy head girl. And it was really good for me because I did have to stand up and speak. And what they did was they kind of held my hand a bit through it. I kind of could share the load with the other deputy head girl and the head girl. But I just had to go through the discomfort. And I had to use the little bits of evidence that I picked up on the way that I could do these things. And it got easier and easier. And then, I was not going to be a public speaker. That was not going to be my thing. But I was asked to go back to my school after they saw me on the TV because I'd become the first British woman to fly from the summit of Mont Blanc. And they asked me to go and do a talk about it. And I realised that I had this amazing opportunity to go and share my experience, and I shouldn't let my fear of doing it stop me. And I was like, if I can fly off a mountain, I can stand up in front of people and tell them about it. So I forced myself into it. The week before, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. But you know what? I did it, and the adrenaline and the fear that I had, I'd realised that through the sports that I did with my paragliding, with my mountain climbing, I was able to harness that fear and use it to focus me. And I did that with my public speaking. I used the fear to realise that actually it wasn't going to paralyse me, it was going to focus me. And, sometimes you just have to go through the discomfort and you just get better and better at it. So gentle exposure is good. Like maybe don't throw yourself off the deep end, but that's basically how I did it.
Yeah. And having been through these, big adventures, have you learned any rituals or good habits that you would recommend other people get into?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a saying by James Clear that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So, the goal is to reach the top of the mountain and get back down safely, but it's the systems that get you there. So I look at what I'm doing in every day, like what are my systems like? So even for a talk that I'm doing, what's my system to get to the talk? It's all very well going and standing up and speaking to a load of people. But how am I preparing? Like, am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Have I prepared the talk? Have I learned it? Have I thought about it? And it's those systems, those repeated systems. It's the same with sport. If you've got a marathon to do or a 5K run, you don't just go and do the run. You plan and you train and you work out which systems work for you. So my rituals are kind of like my systems, but another ritual that I have that's very personal to me that I'm kind of known for is my knickers philosophy.
I knew you were going to talk about your knickers. Marvellous. So you're still as passionate about having the right underwear as you ever have been.
Right from when I was at school and I picked out the underwear I would wear for a certain day for an exam or a sporting fixture or something, I have this theory that if your knickers are right, your day goes right. And it's about getting the basic stuff sorted because it's the foundation of everything. And I also think, I stand up in front of people and I talk about mountains, paragliders, motorbikes, and that is absolutely not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody's interested in that. But I'm pretty sure everybody can relate to what you wear when you get dressed in the morning and how that makes you feel. Like on mountains as well, when I first started climbing, it's not so much now, but it was very male dominated. And it was kind of like a cool thing to not have a shower for 2 weeks and to grow a beard and all this kind of thing. And obviously I didn't do the growing the beard bit, but I felt really uncomfortable not having a shower and I wanted to be clean. And so I'd do things like take my shampoo and have like a tent wash and go and find a stream and clean myself. And I shared that with other people in it. There were actually women that came to do the trips, and guys actually, because they realised that you could make yourself comfortable and you didn't have to do what everybody else was doing. You could do it your own way. And I think making it more comfortable and relatable is a really good thing.
Do you have routines, Holly, that you go through because Holly is a fantastic hockey player of a really high level, but do you have certain routines that you go through?
Yeah, I do find doing the same things before a hockey match does kind of help you get into the right mindset. I think music is a really big thing for me, even if it's just 5 minutes, 2 songs or something. There are certain songs as well that get me in the right mood to play, but I think that it's on a lower scale than climbing.
Not at all. Not at all. Like how we do anything is how we do everything.
It's like the order you put your socks on and all of that kind of thing. It can make a difference. And I find, not necessarily about my underwear, won't go there right now, but about the clothes I wear when I go to work. If I've got a difficult meeting, I'll have a particular suit that I'll wear. It's a bit like an armour. So I feel I can do it.
It's familiar, isn't it? It's comforting.
It is. It's a similar kind of thing.
I think something that I do that I noticed that I did in retrospect is before I'm about to do something significant, whether it's going on stage, taking off on my paraglider, about to ride my motorbike, I take a moment, I take a breath. And I think that we all have this ability to stand in our power and remind ourselves who we are. And I think that I realise that sometimes we don't have an hour to set up. Sometimes we have seconds. You know, just before I'm about to take off, you wait for the weather window and then it's like, go. And just before I go, I take a deep breath, I drop my shoulders, I relax everything, and it causes a change in state. And I just remind myself who I am. So, everybody can do it. Everybody has evidence of something they've got through. Whether it was a test or an exam or something difficult with a family member, with a friend at school. And you can lean on that evidence and know that you are a strong person who gets through things. And in that breath, you can remind yourself and you can take yourself into something. And I realise that perhaps my ritual is I have a few moments before I'm about to do a talk, before I'm about to climb a mountain or set off from my tent. I just have a moment and I'm like, Squash, who are you? And then I leave in that state.
Yeah.
It's almost like meditation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's right.
After a big achievement, how do you deal with like the come down, and what are you going to do next?
Yeah, it's a great question. And typically when I've done expeditions or I've done big adventures, before I've even finished, people are asking me what's next. Yeah. And I think the high of doing something amazing is obviously incredible and it's massive. And I'm a real believer in equals and opposites. So when you have a big high, you have an equally big low. And they call it expedition blues in the adventuring world. And I have experienced that. And I've come back from a trip and I've known that it's going to be difficult and hard because there's a period of time where life isn't quite so exciting or I don't know what I'm going to do next. So simply knowing that's going to happen is a good way to just know that I've just got to go with it, feel the feelings and get through it. But interestingly, on Everest, there were moments when I thought I wasn't going to come back. I thought I'd really overcooked it. And I thought that was it. And I was so grateful to be back that it changed my perspective on everything. I mean, it sounds a bit deep for right here now at sea level, but I thought I wasn't going to survive. So I was so grateful to just be alive, to be back to the people that I loved, to be around them, the people that I cared about. And I think that reframe for me, after Everest, even if I was sad or experiencing negative emotions, my reframe was, at least I'm experiencing emotions, because that's better than nothing. So one of the ways that I deal with dark times is at least I'm still feeling, and knowing that when I have the dark, deep times, it's going to go the other way. Nothing lasts, which is good and bad. Nothing great lasts, nothing terrible lasts. But sometimes just hanging on to that and going through it helps. And obviously, because I've been through it several times and I've got this reframe, I kind of coach myself through it, but also, the cliche, talk to people, chat through it, vocalize it, and tell people. I tell people, and I used to try and hide it. I used to always want to be positive and on top of the world and everything, but that's not real. Actually, sometimes I am just down. I don't know what's going on next. I don't know how I'm going to get through. And then I just lean on people around me.
But you've talked about other people a lot, and it just makes me think that the importance of team in everything
massive.
you do, whether you are, on your own going up a mountain or whatever.
You're never truly on your own.
No,
never.
You've got your team around you, and that's the same for you with sport, and you, when you're doing your walks, Raf, or whatever, you've got a team around you with that voice in your ear saying, yeah, you can do it, I've got you, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is really important, isn't it? The same for life in general, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm sure you've got plenty of examples of times when you've had a plan and you're going to do something and then something changes and knocks that plan completely off course. And I suppose I'm interested to know how you cope with that and what advice you would give young people about dealing with those unexpected curveballs.
I think that was a real big one for me because I love routine, and I do really well when I know what's going on. Yeah. And I'm not great when I'm suddenly thrust out of my comfort zone or something goes wrong. And that's something I had to really learn and work on. And on mountains, I really had to lean into that because you can have a plan and the weather changes and that plan goes out the window. And I learned that actually if I could just trust myself, because I had the experience of things still going well when the plan changed. Yeah. So I think I learned that it would be okay. And then I just learned to trust myself. Yeah. On Everest, mentally it's quite difficult because everybody's at base camp and it's like a waiting game. You're all waiting for the weather window. Everybody's getting anxious about it. No one knows exactly what's going to happen. Plans shift and change all the time. And if you can learn to get comfortable in that and not waste your energy, just trust yourself that you'll do the right thing in the moment because you've done the preparation and you know that you can do the right thing. That's what gets me through. And I think that's just something that experience has helped me with. And also, talking to other people, share how you're feeling. You know, sometimes like on takeoff, I've got a friend that I paraglide with, and we chat to each other before we go because it calms us down, and share how you're feeling. Like sometimes if I'm really scared, I'll say I'm really scared, and just airing it helps, because somebody will say to me, it's okay, like I've got you. You know, like before I was talking to you guys, you prefects and everything, I didn't know exactly what to expect. And your deputy head, he was great. I said to him, look, I don't quite know what to expect. And I said, if you're there to just change the direction, ask a few questions. And do you know what? He was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And I guess what I was doing was asking him for reassurance and help. Yeah. And I think it's just good to hear that from people, that you also perceive as having it all together and sorted. Because let me tell you, nobody has got it all together and sorted. Yeah. We're all just winging it, just at a different level.
Yeah. Raf, just talk to us a little bit about because you did the coast to coast.
Yeah.
Was it in the summer?
It was May half term.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. And did you have a few occasions when things weren't quite as you expected? Did you have to deal with anything like that? Any challenges?
Yeah, definitely at the start. I think the main challenge was me and Fred both thought we were in a bit too deep, because we didn't know it was possible in the time that we gave ourselves. Yeah. And obviously we'd made a promise to everyone, and the charity raised money, so that was quite scary. Yeah. And then when we got a bit more into it, everyone kind of calmed down. Yeah, so it's that what
Squash says about trusting yourself. You gradually begin to believe that you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you run that, or
we walked it?
Amazing.
Yeah. But you did it in quite a short space of time, didn't you?
We did it in 8 days.
Wow.
Yes,
just
that was
about 8 days. Yeah.
That was quite a lot of miles.
I think it's important as well to have a challenge that scares you. Like, were you at the beginning thinking, what have I done? What have I signed up for?
Definitely.
And I think it's great that you told other people and you had a charity you were supporting, because what that does is it makes you go through it even when you don't want to. Yeah. You have a bigger why. You know, I would have run away from things. Like if I hadn't committed today, I'd have just scrubbed it out the diary and not come, because it's easier not to do the thing, isn't it? Yeah. When you've got to show up and people are relying on you, it's great to put yourself in that position, which is why I talk about saying things out loud. Yes. Because then you have accountability and you kind of have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of really linking to that, you know, what role does goal setting play in your life? Is there ever setting goals too high, or would you recommend, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like definitely, I think dreaming big is massive. You know, if I hadn't have attempted to be the first woman in the world to fly off Mount Everest, I don't think I'd have reached the top. You know, I didn't fly off Everest, but my goal was to do that. But I still reached further than I ever would have done had I not been attempting to do that. Yeah. You know, and the journey there is amazing. Like I didn't summit Mustagata. We had to turn back because the weather deteriorated. Several things happened. And I realised that when I got back, there was no conversation for me about not reaching the summit. I'd still had this amazing experience. I'd met these wonderful people. I'd pushed myself harder than I'd ever pushed myself. I still got higher than I thought I would. So you still achieve amazing things. You meet amazing people, and you never know how that's going to impact your life down the line. So I think goal setting's great because it gives you a discipline, a motivation, a direction. But it also, you know, don't be too attached to it, and have interim goals on the way so that you can still recognise success and not be too attached to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really wise advice, especially for the young people in this room, because sometimes I think, not just in this room, but there are lots of expectations on the children in this school. And what we try and drill into all of them is that, you know, you're creating your story here, and your story will be different to the next person's, and it's different to your parents and your brothers and sisters, and it's yours. So be aspirational always and keep moving forward, but it's got to be on your terms, hasn't it?
Yeah, in one of the sessions earlier, we were talking about what success meant, and one of the girls said, you know, being happy with what I've done, and it was a fantastic point because, you know, right now I'm not doing big, massive expeditions, and my happiness comes from achieving smaller things in the daytime. Like I like to have the freedom to do what I want with my days. I'm not tied down to anything, and I like to have the time to do a workout. And for me, that's success and that's happiness when I've got space and time. I can do my workout and I can be the person I want to be. And to a lot of people, that, you know, compared to what I've done in the past, that sounds a bit ridiculous, but that's actually where I get my contentment from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favourite adventure or record that you're particularly proud of, or that stood out above the rest? And is there anything you're still hoping to achieve?
Great question. In terms of mountains and expeditions, obviously Everest is amazing. Like, it's Everest, it's everything. But I think Mont Blanc, really, you know, that trip was it was ridiculous from start to finish. Like, I came up with this crazy idea to ride a motorbike from England, to climb it and fly off the top. Like, it just wasn't really going to happen. Like, I knew I was going to give it a best shot, but I wasn't really probably going to do it. Then I didn't have any of the equipment, I didn't have any money, and the way it all came together, like, I was so shocked, because obviously, like, I you guys know the story, but I played my sponsors off against each other. I told BMW that the BBC were making a programme about me. I told the BBC that the BMW were behind it. Like, I made it sound like this massive thing. And because everyone was involved, everyone wanted to be involved. And right at the last minute, it all came together. You know, that's really, as far as I was concerned, it was creative thinking at its best. And, you know, it all came together. And I think it really showed me that where there's a will, there's a way. You know, I didn't have any money to do this trip, but out of nowhere, I got myself on a brand new BMW. I'd got video cameras. I got all these people behind me. And I'd made it happen. And then, against all odds, I did it. And then after that, I find out afterwards that I'm the first British woman to do it. And it was just like, wow. Even now when I talk about it, I still can't really believe it happened. So that is an absolute standout. And it really kind of made me realise that anything is possible, or certainly trying, you know. And I just thought, I'm always going to go for things, because you never know what's going to happen. And right up until the last minute, you know, that Mont Blanc trip wasn't going to happen until 4 days before I left, because I didn't have the bike. But right at the last minute, it came together. And I think that those are the moments when the pressure's on, that you have to think outside the box and you make it happen. So that one. And then I guess the other one is, like, my daughter and being a parent. Like, that's massive. A totally different challenge. But wow, Everest is quite easy in comparison.
But I was going to ask you, if your daughter turned to you and said, Mummy, I'm going to go and I am going to go up Everest and fly off the top of it.
No. Absolutely not. We're not flying paragliders, we're not riding motorbikes, and we are not climbing mountains. And that's actually been a really difficult one. And I think, as any parent knows, like, it's the hardest thing in the world. You love them so much. I want her to do everything, and I want to wrap her up in cotton wool and keep her at home. But I think the best thing I can do is arm her as well as possible. You know, the first thing I did when my daughter was born was apologise to my mum. And she was like, it's been hell, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. And I think the best thing you can do, and it's like, I'm sure your teachers here at school will feel the same, we want to equip you with the best skills and confidence as much as possible to go out there and live your dreams, and trust that you'll go and know the right decisions to make in the time. But it's not about stopping people doing what they want to do. And it is the hardest thing to let people you love and care about go and do those things. But of course, if she wants to do it, my role will be simply just to equip her as best as I possibly can.
How old is she now?
She's 6, and she's already talking about it already. Talking about it already. I've only got myself to blame, haven't I?
Yes, I think
she thinks it's normal, though. She thinks going to work is going
That's
to
what all
climb Everest. Yeah.
So I talk about the pupils in the school as having 400 free spirits here, because they are all so different. And it's something that we really celebrate. And you strike me as a complete free spirit, Squash, because it isn't a normal path to take, whatever normal is. So do you think that is a mixture of nature and nurture, that free spirit that you've had in you, obviously since you were a young girl?
Yes.
You know, how has it come about?
I think it definitely is. I think, you know, growing up on a farm really helped, because I was in the outdoors. I was outgoing. You know, I did quite we had motorbikes on the farm. You know, I was on the farm. But I think my school, I went to Oakbrook School, and it very much reminds me of Framlingham. It was I was kind of a big fish in a small pond, which I think a lot of your pupils probably are here. And I was given the freedom to think my own thoughts. I was encouraged, and it's that unconditional love and support. And what I realised was, we only need one person standing behind us, believing in us unconditionally, to help us do that. And I think my advice would be, go and find your person. It could be your parents, your mum or your dad. It could be your brother or sister. It could be a friend at school. It could be a teacher. But find that person that you know has got your back. And it doesn't matter if 1,000 people are saying no to you. You know, I had that with Mont Blanc. Everyone was laughing at me. Everyone thought I was ridiculous. But Erwin, who I was doing it with, said to me, we can do this, Squash. And I had that quiet, calm voice. And I also, you know, I think go into yourself and actually take the time to think about who you are and what you want and what you've done, because it is within all of us. And, you know, I think sometimes all it takes is being told that you've got that. Like, I was told to think about who I was and what I could do. So I just went, oh, yeah. And I thought about it. And then I found the evidence, and I think take the time to think about who you are and what you can do, and then build on that. So I think, to answer your question, definitely a mixture of both. But I think, I get that sense of Framlingham here. Like, I can feel the uniqueness of this school. Like, your pupils are amazing. Everyone I've interacted with and spoke to today, you're fantastic. And you've got a phenomenal foundation to take off from here.
Yeah. And I guess what, in the wider picture is that we want every young person to have the belief that you have, whether they're in this school or another school. Do you know what I mean? There's so many young people who don't have the confidence to strike out and do what they want to do.
I think actually saying it out loud, you speak it, you say it.
Right.
And I've heard you say it loads of times. And I can see it, it sounds like, I'm not comfortable necessarily saying things to people, giving them a compliment, but I always make myself do it because there's people that have said things to me in my life, one sentence that will have meant nothing to them in saying it, but it changed the direction of my life. So if I see somebody doing something well or looking nice or achieving something, even though it's a bit awkward to say it sometimes, I say it and I speak it. And the fact that you say to people, you are strong enough, you can do these things, you're stronger than you think you are, you can do more than you ever believed possible. Just hearing those words is really powerful. Because we do hear things, and sometimes we're not in a place where we're receptive to hear it. We listen to it, but it doesn't go in. But then later on in life, it'll resonate. I remember being at school and hearing an Olympic athlete come in and talk to us. And it didn't really resonate at the time, but years later, I remembered something she said, and suddenly it reminded me, and I was like, that's what she was talking about. And it resonated all those years later.
Yeah. I want to know about the knickers. Okay, yeah. So I am wondering, you haven't branched out into an underwear brand yet, have you? Because I think that's the next step.
So no, I haven't. But
do you need
after years of this, I always used to be asked, do I have a knicker sponsor? And I didn't until last year. I was doing a talk for a company, and their CEO said, "Do you have a knicker sponsor?" I said no, and she said, "I'm friends with the founder of Stripe and Stare." And I now have a knicker sponsor.
Excellent. Okay, so that's the next step.
That's a plug for Stripe and Stare.
I'm loving it.
Knickers.
Okay,
there will be a knicker line out there before I'm done.
Eventually. So, Squash, do you have any advice for young people on having the courage to challenge the status quo, not just accepting what they're told, but to challenge things?
Yes, definitely. Do it. I think it's hard sometimes, isn't it? Because, we're told to respect people and everything else. And I think there is a way to do it respectfully. But I think if something doesn't feel right or you've got an idea, actually it's about being brave. Be brave to say the thing. Don't worry about sounding silly. Don't worry if people laugh at you. It's quite a difficult thing to speak out. And I was typically the class clown, so I was laughed at a lot. But I did say things. I was brave about things. And I remember one of my teachers saying to me once, she said, you do say some funny things, but you do it with a smile on your face and it's much easier to take, So I think do it in a polite way, be positive, be interested, and be open for discussions and don't be afraid to ask why. My nickname at primary school was 20 questions, and I always asked why. I think be curious. And I think actually sometimes I have this thing with my daughter. I often hear myself say no to her. And I've started saying to myself, every time I hear myself say no, can that no be a yes? So when she says something to me and I say no, she'll often challenge me anyway because she's 6, but I challenge myself and I'm like, can that no be a yes? Yeah. And I think as adults, I actually want to be challenged. I want someone to come and show me a different way because I do get stuck in my way. So I actually welcome it, especially if it's done in a nice way. So I think don't be afraid to speak up, be brave. And if you've got an idea, be bold about it and go for it.
Fantastic. Now, I know you're talking to us all later because we've got a fantastic talk, so I'm not going to take all the nuggets away, such as why you're called Squash, because I'm sure you'll mention that at some point.
Yes, I've told. Yeah, it's always a question.
Yeah, it's always a question. But my last question is about failing. So you said you never, you learn or you win. Yeah, is what you said. Yeah, and so, what's the episode in your life that's taught you the most because it didn't work, would you say?
I mean, in terms of mountains, it was definitely not summiting Mustagata. That was a great lesson because I realised that I could be in the mountains and I didn't have to summit them.
And why didn't you summit? What happened?
Because the weather deteriorated.
The weather.
And we reached the turn back time. We could have carried on. We could have carried on for sure, but we knew the weather was getting worse, so we made the call to turn back. And So that definitely stuck with me. But I think the biggest thing was, I always had this expectation. I think because my mum got married, had 2 children, I just thought that's what I would do.
Yeah.
And I had my daughter, things didn't quite work out, and I had a really difficult few years.
Yeah. Not
few weeks. On expeditions, I'd experienced tough times that were days and weeks long. And I had 3 difficult years. And I think, there were moments when I was really in the trenches with it. And I actually clung on to, like, what did I learn on the mountain? Like, how did I survive? How did I get through? And actually, it comes back down to the very basics. I know that when you're stripped away of everything and you're struggling, I have to sort my sleep out. I have to sort my diet out. I have to get the right team around me. It's like it strips it down to what are the essential things that I need. Yeah. And I think it literally becomes about survival. You've got to survive before you can thrive. And I think get the right people around you. Look after yourself. Think about what you're putting in, because that affects the performance you give out. Yeah. And know that you can go through dark times that can last weeks, months, years. But if you just keep going one step in front of the other, you will get through. And that it does come right. Just don't give up. The hardest thing to see is when people actually lose hope. I think through all the difficult times, the thing that I've never done is lost hope. And it's so powerful. And when you forget who you are, surround yourself with people around you that know who you are and can remind you who you are.
Yeah. And wear good knickers.
And wear good knickers, for that goes without saying.
Squash, I'm going to round this up and say thank you so much. Thank you to Raf.
Pleasure, yeah.
Thank you to Holly. And thank you so much for your time today. It's fantastic. Thank you.